Wild Witch, and today I didn't have anything per se scheduled, but I didn't want to go. There we go. I didn't want to go through a Monday without doing a live for you guys, so I decided to go ahead and come in here and do an impromptu, unscheduled one. Let me turn on the streaming so that the folks in Instagram can see it. I hope I got this done correctly this time. But anyway, the topic I want to talk to you guys about today is going to be regarding oils, working with oils in your practice. And one of the things that I've noticed is a lot of folks come in and they are not exactly sure what the difference is. Like, so they'll get an essential oil, or they'll get a fragrance oil, or they'll get a blended oil. And for a lot of them, this is pretty much all the same. So let's talk about the differences between them. So the first one that everybody's heard of, and probably because of like Young Living and brands like doTERRA, things like that, is essential oils. And some of these, like I got this one actually at the grocery store. You can get them at the grocery store. You can get them at my shop. You can get it anywhere. I got this at the grocery store because I needed it fast and I did not have any for my shop at home, but I prefer my shop. But anyway, so you can get it even at the grocery store. And essentially what an essential oil is, it's its super extra concentrated version of that plant that you're working with. So there's two major ways that they will create essential oils. The first one generally is by something that we call cold pressing. And as they take the herbs, they put a bunch of herbs together and then they squeeze until all that herb juice comes out. And then the second most common one is steam distilled. And then what happens with that is they put the herbs in a water and in a sill so that nothing can escape from it. They boil it up and they turn it up. And then once it starts boiling, they will take the steam will rise up and the steam will contain the oil molecules. And they have a tube on the top that will pull the steam out. So either one of those methods, what's going to happen is it's going to be very, very concentrated version of that oil. So the important thing to remember about that is that when you're working with it, let's say you're getting in eucalyptus oil, right? And now you're going to work with that oil is you're going to say, okay, now it's not just working with a little bit of eucalyptus. You basically need like a ton of eucalyptus to make a little bottle of oil like this. So you can imagine that the concentration of eucalyptus in that bottle is going to be very, very high. And so this is one of the reasons why I always recommend blending the oil before you use it. So for example, I would take an oil like this, and then I would take my regular, I think I have a bottle of oil here somewhere. I have this one here. Doesn't have a label on it. You would take it and you would blend it with, this has got coloring on the bottom, sorry. But you would blend it with a regular oil. I prefer to use fractured coconut oil, or a lot of times I'll use jojoba oil. You can blend it in there, and what that does is it's going to dilute this oil, but what you're getting is the true essence of that herb, because this is actually the herb itself that was compressed. You cannot use this directly on your skin, and I don't care what anybody tells you. And the reason for it is because a lot of times when something is compressed like that or something is steam distilled, there's not a great way to separate the more toxic components of that oil into the blend that you're blending. So what is going to end up happening at that point is that you're going to be in a situation where those toxins or those things that are skin irritants are going to be super concentrated. So when you get that, it's super concentrated, and when you put it on your skin directly, sometimes it causes burns. This is why if you put on essential oils and you go to the tanning salon, a lot of times you will walk out of there with a pretty nasty burn. And this is, essentially what it is. So rule number one, never, ever, ever, ever use essential oils by themselves. So I have this bottle of essential oil here, peppermint. If I wanted to use it to anoint a candle, I would dilute it with another oil, and then I would use it, because that's really all you need. You're not going to get more power by using essential oil. This is the comment that everybody tells me, well, if it's super concentrated and more, then it's going to be more powerful. It is not, because what you're bringing in is the essence of that herb, and you just need a little bit for it to be able to bring it in, because once again, it's super concentrated. You wouldn't take 3 pounds of eucalyptus and grind it down to make your one little cup of incense. I mean, that just you wouldn't want to do that. So you don't want to do that with the oil as well. So that is essential oils. The second type of oil is a blended oil that we kind of already touched on a little bit, and I have one right here. this one here is blended. So this one here is blended. There's nothing, I don't know if you can see it, there's nothing in it other than the oil. And so what happens in this is you will take the oil base that we talked about. You will generally take your essential oils, and then you can mix and match. So you can have 3 different essential oils, and you put however many drops of each essential oil you want to put to make your one blended oil. And then you can use it on your body. You can use it to anoint your candles, to anoint different things. That is the primary way that we create blended oils for spell casting. So if you buy it from me, and if you buy it from the majority of other places you're going to buy it online, it's going to be the exact same process. We have an oil base, and then we add essential oils to it to create our blended magical oil. So that is the blended oils issue. And then so the third way that you can use it is you can use an infused oil. So people say, what is infused? So infused is where you take the oil, and this one has a lot of, so you put all the herbs in there, and then what you're going to do is you're going to put this in a slow cooker, and you're going to cook that so that all the herbs are going to extract into that oil. So you get an oil that is not super duper concentrated like you have with essential oil, because you're not using gallons of herbs. You're using just enough for that oil blend. So when you pull that out, you can use that directly. And once again, what you've done now is, instead of extracting the essential oil of the herb into a water type base, you've extracted that into a oil base. So you can, cook the oil that way. A lot of people like to create an herb sachet or an herb group that they're going to use to create their blended oils. Then they put it in, and then they cook it that way, and it comes out. The other way you can do it is you can make individual blended oils. Like I like to create them individually. So like calendula and rose. So I have a big container of calendula, a big container of rose. And then as I need it, so I'll blend a little bit of calendula in, a little bit of rose, so I can actually visually see how much of that I'm adding. And the other benefit of that is that, I created this big container of calendula. So in mine, the reason I don't have it here is because mine is still out in the sun from when I put it out there. So it's got to go for about 6 weeks. But anyway, so you can take that oil, use a little bit for your blending, and then you can use the rest for all kinds of things. So calendula is good for the skin, and you can make soap with it. You can make lotion with it, a whole bunch of other stuff, so that the whole thing is not wasted in just one little bottle of oil. So you have multiple uses for it. So that's how you can use blended oils as part of your of working with the oils that you're working with. So that is also important. And the last thing that I'm going to talk about is going to be fragrance oils. This is an old bottle of fragrance oil. You can see the labels kind of a little bit. This is a Love fragrance oil. And what a fragrance oil is, it is an oil that doesn't contain any part of the plant in it. So for example, what they did is they created a chemical compound that smells like the plant. And then that's what they use. And it's interesting to me because when I first started in this business, I started selling essential oil of sandalwood, right, as true essential oil. And it was blended with it was blended, and it was blended with the actual essential oil of the herb. So instead of using the actual sandalwood, I used the super concentrated version, which is hideously expensive. I mean, for a bottle like this of sandalwood, you're probably going to pay $150 to $200. That's how much it costs. If you see a bottle like this that says sandalwood and it says $12, that is a fragrance oil. That is not an essential oil. You cannot get an essential oil for $12 of sandalwood in this size. So it was interesting because the sandalwood, the actual fragrance oil, the actual essential oil from sandalwood has a very, very mild scent. And so what people are expected and used to is that perfumey sandalwood scent, right? And that is from a synthetic blend. So when I first started selling it, I would blend it just with the essential oil. And people would message me back and say, this doesn't have sandalwood in it. And I'm like, yes, it does. It's got sandalwood in it. They're like, nope, it doesn't. So eventually what I ended up having to do is I ended up having to put in the actual sandalwood essential oil and then add a few drops of sandalwood fragrance oil so that it would have the scent that people were expecting, but it would also contain some of the actual herb in there for you to take the actual power of it. So that's kind of how fragrance oils work. Now, there are some fragrance oils out there, depending on where you go. One place that I highly recommend is wholesale supplies.com. They have a lot of stuff for like if you're a home crafter and you're creating any kind of like blend for yourself. They will have some blends in there that are made with the actual essential oil. So what that means is it's actually kind of similar to the way that I created my fragrance, my sandalwood oil, where they put in a little bit of the actual sandalwood and then a whole boatload of fragrance on top of it. So you have that fragrance, but you also have the true essence of sandalwood in it. So if you get it from those places, you can then use that oil kind of like you would use an essential oil. It's not as concentrated, but it does have some of the real plant in it. So is fragrance oils bad? Is that something you never want to use? It depends, right? Because when you're working with magic, you're working with many different components of the oil. So if you are working with witchcraft, generally, you're working with a totem spirit that exists, the plant spirit from that particular plant that is in that oil. And so for that, you're going to need the actual plant itself to be in there, because the fragrance oil is going to smell like it, but it's not going to be the actual person or the actual plant. And I say person because in my head I'm thinking, it's the same thing as if you were going to go to dinner with somebody and you wanted to see your friend, right? You could have the friend there and that would be basically the real friend, or you could have a computer that was emulating your friend. It wouldn't be the same experience, and you probably wouldn't get as much out of it as if you had your real friend there. So a fragrance oil is kind of like a computer emulating what that is. So it depends. So if you're working with witchcraft, generally you don't want to use fragrance oils. You want to make sure that you are using the actual herb. Now in voodoo, a lot of times the oils are going to be, the scent of the oil is very important, because the scent is going to be what appeases either a Loa or an Orisha, or one of those guys are going to be very interested in this, how it smells. That's the part that's going to really attract them in. And so in that case, if you'll notice, most of the oils that are produced for conjuring and for voodoo and for things like that, those will tend to contain mostly fragrance oils, because the most important part of that blend is the fragrance. You could have the actual plant in there, but that's not going to be as strong as a really strong perfume fragrance. And it's interesting because in the olden days, what they would use, they would not use oils. They would actually use colognes for each one, because you wanted the scent of that smell to attract the spirit you were calling into. So a lot of times people go, oh, fragrance oils are bad all the time. They're not bad all the time. It depends on what it is that you are actually working with and what it is that you're trying to bring into your blend, so that you can know what exactly works for you and what does not work for you. So that is a little bit of a lowdown. So now once you know what oil you're working with, and also know prices, right? The biggest telltale sign for you is going to be when you look at an oil blend, and some manufacturers, and I've received this actually in some of my monthly subscription boxes that will come in, like perfect example was a rosemary oil that I received. So I received a little rosemary oil, and on the bottle of the oil, it said rosemary. It didn't say anything. And then the paperwork that came in with it said rosemary essential oil. But I needed to know if that was real, because when I smelled it, it smelled perfumey. It didn't smell to me like real rosemary essential oil did. So I had to go into that company's website that made that oil. And what I found out is it was a rosemary fragrance oil. And so fragrance oils you can use for aromatherapy, for things like that. But if you are actually looking to work with the plant totem, the actual rosemary plant totem, a fragrance oil is not going to be what's going to be helpful for you at that point. So always look, just because somebody tells you that something is an essential oil, you want to look and say, okay, what method did you use to create that essential oil? Is it cold pressed? Is it steam distilled? There's another method called CO2 extraction, which is they put all of the herb in there with so a little bit of water, and they pump in different types of gases, mostly CO2. And that CO2 is going to basically push the oils out of the plant and then carry the oil out. So it's a combination of steam distillation and regular, gas distillation. So there's going to be different kinds of ways that essential oils are created. So if you want to know if what you have is really an essential oil, there's ways for you to find out. Telltale sign for you is going to be the price. So you have some oils that are very expensive. For example, rose doesn't come in an essential oil. It comes in an absolute, which is a completely different extraction method. And so it is going to be very expensive. So if you get a bottle like this that says rose oil for $15, not an essential oil. Another one is going to be jasmine. Jasmine is a perfect example. If you get a bottle like this of jasmine, that $12-15, it's not the essential oil, because jasmine is also an absolute. It's a very specific process for extracting the delicate scent of some plants. And so in that case, it's going to be this different process. And you're probably, for a bottle like this, if you're looking at true essential oil for jasmine, you're probably going to be paying somewhere in the round of $200 to $300. That is how much that would run. And it would be the same thing for rose fragrance oil, for rose essential oil. Another one is going to be, like we said, sandalwood. It's going to be another one that you're going to know. And another one's going to be myrrh. Myrrh is not as expensive as the others, but you can easily pay for a bottle like this, $100, $70. And when you get myrrh essential oil, it's very resinous. So a lot of times that oil is going to be like alcohol extracted in some way so they can pull it in, but it's still going to be, a very thick oil, right? And so when you start using it, if you leave it on your shelf for too long, it ends up getting very, very thick on the bottom, and it's really hard to get it out of the bottle. It's hard to mix because over time that oil will compress even more, because once again, it's a resin, right? And if you think what a resin basically is sap from a tree. Its natural form is that thick, gooey thing. So we extract it, we do something to dilute that a little bit, and eventually as water evaporates from that process, it's going to concentrate and concentrate and concentrate, and you're going to end up with the actual resin back. So if you get one like this and it's really nice and liquidy and all that, chances are it's not real essential oil. A lot of times if you can get an essential, they'll tell you it's a myrrh essential oil blend, which is where they put a little bit of the essential oil and they put the rest of it will be a fragrance oil. And that is something that I prefer to work with that, because number one, I know it's not going to get super thick. It's going to have a longer shelf life, and it still has the real essential oil in there. And you can get those for a lot cheaper. Sometimes you'll pay, $20-30 for a bottle like this as opposed to $100. So there's lots and lots of different options. So anytime you start working with an oil, understand what the oil is, understand what it is that you're trying to do, what the oil is going to do for you, and then understand really clearly what product you have sitting in front of you. Do you have something that's extracted from the herb, which means it's going to be an essential oil? Do you have a fragrance, which means it was created chemically in a lab to have that smell of the oil? Or do you have something else? So there's a lot of different ways that you can see that. So that's pretty much it. So right now, I'm not seeing any comments here. And this is, like I said before, it's a new platform. I know that I can't see comments from Instagram, but I'm not seeing any comments right now from YouTube or Facebook. So if you have any questions, just post it on there and I will be happy to respond. But if not, if I don't see them here and you still have a question, you feel free to message me. Feel free to post as a reply to the video once it posts. Anything like that, I'll be more than happy to help you out. And then the other thing that I'm going to say is going to be about the events that are happening this week. There will not be a live sale tomorrow. And the reason for that is because, once again, I don't have anything scheduled. I don't have a theme. But this week, I'm going to start posting all the events for August. So keep an eye out. If you are at the Wild Community, you're going to get first shot at all of these. So keep an eye out for those and see what's happening and see what you can join. The other thing is that's really exciting is I'm going to start teaching those shorter classes, the one-up classes that I had online again, which I don't know why I stopped teaching them, but I'm going to start teaching them online. So you keep a lookout for those. And those classes are the Learning to Tarot class, the Unhexing Your Life class, all of these different classes, the scrying class that's going to come around October. I always teach that around October. All of these small one-up classes are going to be taught over Zoom again, and you can sign up for them individually as you want. So take a peek at that once it's posted, and then if you have any questions, feel free to let me know. All right, guys, thank you so much for joining me. Sorry that this is kind of impromptu, so it wasn't exactly starting at 2 o'clock like it normally does, but I didn't want the week to go without you guys having a live today. So I hope you all have a fantastic week, and I'll see you all next week. All right, guys, take care. Bye-bye.